The history of the United States is often traced back to 1776 and the signing of the Declaration of Independence. But European colonization of North America began over 150 years before the American Revolution. So today on Globe Trekking, we're taking a journey back in time to explore the 10 oldest cities and towns in the United States. These settlements were established by early colonists and conquerors long before America became a nation. From the landing of the Pilgrims in Massachusetts to Spanish colonization of the Southwest, we reveal the first permanent European outposts that planted roots in North America. Along the way, we'll highlight key moments and legacy of these historic places. So hit that subscribe button as we trek through 4 centuries of history to uncover the oldest cities in America. Number 10. Weymouth, Massachusetts. Our journey starts in the year 1622 with the founding of Waymouth, Massachusetts. Located about 15 miles south of Boston along the Atlantic coast, Weymouth was the second permanent English settlement established in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. The ill-fated Popham Colony in Maine was the first back in 1607, but it was abandoned after just 1 year. Weymouth had more success, but it still struggled in its early years. The Plymouth Company hoped it would help support their main settlement at Plymouth, which was founded 2 years prior in 1620. But the 60 settlers sent to Weymouth were underprepared and undersupplied. They erected some houses and a storehouse, but lacked food and resources. Many returned to England within a year. Those that remained were reinforced in 1623 and 1624 with more colonists and supplies. Gradually, Weymouth took root as permanent settlement along Massachusetts Bay. But it would be dependent on the larger Plymouth colony and later Massachusetts Bay Colony for protection and trade. Today, after 400 years, Weymouth is still thriving as part of metropolitan Boston. Number 9. Plymouth, Massachusetts. Of course, no discussion of early American history is complete without mentioning Plymouth Colony in Massachusetts. Its founding by the Pilgrims aboard the Mayflower is one of the most iconic moments in colonial America. On December 21, 1620, after 66 grueling days at sea, the Mayflower, carrying 101 passengers and a crew of 30, dropped anchor at present-day Plymouth Harbor. The Pilgrims chose the site for their settlement since it had already been cleared of trees. Before landing, 41 male passengers signed the Mayflower Compact, agreeing to form a civil body politic to enact laws for the general good of the colony. After exploring the area, the Pilgrims began constructing their village, which they called Plymouth after the port city in England from which they departed. That first winter was devastating for the colonists, as half their number perished from disease and starvation. Without assistance from the native Wampanoag peoples, Plymouth may have suffered the same fate as Popham Colony. Yet despite the challenges, the Pilgrims persevered. Plymouth Colony would go on to become integral to the founding of New England. In 1691, it merged with Massachusetts Bay Colony to form the province of Massachusetts. Nearly 400 years later, the legacy of those first Pilgrims still echoes in Plymouth. Number 8. Jersey City, New Jersey. Jumping up to 1617, we sail across the Hudson River to New Jersey, where settlers established a trading post at present-day Jersey City. It was one of the first European settlements in the mid-Atlantic region. The Dutch West India Company backed these early traders who set up operations on the west bank of the Hudson. Access to the river made it an ideal location, as did the rich stocks of beaver pelts and surrounding forests. Jersey City wouldn't be formally incorporated until nearly 200 years later in 1820. But from those humble beginnings as a Dutch trading post, it slowly grew into a transportation and industrial hub. Today, Jersey City is New Jersey's second largest city with a population of over 260,000. It forms the western anchor of the vibrant New York City metro area. So next time you're gazing at the Manhattan skyline from Jersey City, remember you're standing in one of the oldest settlements in the Northeast. Number 7. Albany, New York. The next stop on our journey is just 150 miles up the Hudson River at present-day Albany, New York. Dutch traders established Fort Nassau here in 1614, making it one of the first European settlements in New York State. The fort was built to control the fur trade along the Hudson River Valley, but constant flooding forced it to be relocated downriver after just 10 years. Still, the area remained occupied by the Dutch. In 1624, they constructed Fort Orange on the river's west bank. This evolved into a permanent settlement first known as Beverwyck. The British took control in 1664, and King Charles II granted the lands to his brother, the Duke of Albany. In his honor, they renamed the town Albany. It was formally chartered as a city in 1686, just 6 years after New York City received its charter. Albany would serve as the capital of New York from 1797 onward. So next time you're in New York's capital city, strolling the charming cobblestone streets, know you're walking on over 400 years of history. Number 6, Newport News, Virginia. Heading south to the mid-Atlantic region, Newport News in Virginia dates back to 1613. That's when English settlers first occupied the land at the southern mouth of the James River off Chesapeake Bay. Over the next 2 centuries, Newport News remained a sparsely populated farming community. Things changed drastically in the late 1800s thanks to the arrival of railways that connected the area to rich Appalachian coal deposits. Soon, major shipyards were constructed to transport coal overseas. The modern city of Newport News traces its roots to this industrial boom of the late 19th century. The shipbuilding industry became a major employer that continues today with Huntington Ingalls Newport News Shipbuilding. They are Virginia's largest industrial employer, producing U.S. Navy warships, including aircraft carriers and submarines. Who knew this modern naval manufacturing hub could trace its early origins back 4 centuries to England's first colony in North America? Number 5, Kukenton, Virginia. A fellow Hampton Roads city just 22 miles northwest across the James River has an equally deep history. Way back in 1610, the English founded Kukenton in present-day Hampton, Virginia. You see, Jamestown settlers had first arrived at Kukenton in 1607 when they sailed into the Chesapeake Bay region. They encountered members of the local Kukenton tribe who inhabited a fishing village here. Relations were peaceful at first, but warfare soon broke out with the Powhatan Confederacy of Tribes. By 1610, the Kukenton village had been defeated. English colonists burned the native homes and renamed it Kukenton. This was one of the Powhatan tribe's most important coastal villages, with abundant fish and oysters to feed 400 to 500 residents. It was ideally situated between the James and York rivers. Sadly, English conflict destroyed Kukenton and all traces of the Kukenton village. In 1619, colonists built Fort Kukenton here. The town around it became part of Elizabeth City. After 1634, it was known as Kukenton Plantation before becoming part of Hampton in 1680. So while its indigenous heritage was erased, as Hampton, this historic coast village still lives on over 400 years later. Number 4, Hampton, Virginia. That brings us to the city that absorbed ancient Kukenton, the town of Hampton. It was founded in 1610 by colonists from the original Jamestown settlement, making it the oldest continuous English settlement in America. The site was ideal for an outpost, located near the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay and along the James River. Early fortifications were built to defend the Virginia colony, including Fort Algernon and Fort Crawford. During the colonial era, Hampton became a thriving port town exporting tobacco to Europe. It was burned by the British during the War of 1812, then recovered as a steamboat port and oyster hub. After the Civil War, Hampton rebuilt itself yet again as a Victorian resort town catering to soldiers from nearby Fort Monroe Army Base. Today, it remains home to Langley Air Force Base, asserting Hampton's legacy as a strategic military town. Not bad for a settlement initially founded over 400 years ago as a protective outpost for the Jamestown colonists upriver. Number 3, Jamestown, Virginia. That brings us to Jamestown, America's first permanent English colony and the start of England's colonial ambitions in the New World. The Virginia Company of London sent 144 settlers aboard 3 ships, the Susan Constant, Godspeed, and Discovery, to establish a garrison and trading town on the Virginia Peninsula. After a 5-month journey, they arrived in April of 1607 at Jamestown Island in the Chesapeake Bay. The site was chosen as easily defensible against naval attacks from Spain. On May 13th, they erected a tall wooden palisade wall in a triangular shape to create Fort Jamestown, named for King James I of England. Inside were their church, storehouse, and exact reproductions of the common houses back at Jamestown in England. But the early years were brutal for the colonists as they struggled against starvation, disease, attacks from Algonquin tribes, and poor leadership. At one point in 1610, most colonists abandoned Jamestown, leaving just a few dozen who managed to hold out until reinforcements arrived. Gradually, Jamestown stabilized through tobacco farming, the 1619 House of Burgesses establishment of English legal precedent on U.S. soil, and more colonists. By the late 1600s, Jamestown had transitioned from frontier garrison to colonial capital of Virginia for nearly 100 years. Today, the original Jamestown site is an archaeological park run by the U.S. National Park Service. It offers a glimpse into 400 years ago, when America's first English settlers carved out an existence in the wilderness. Number 2, Santa Fe, New Mexico. Crossing the desert Southwest, we journey to Santa Fe, New Mexico, the oldest capital city in the United States, tracing its roots back to 1607. That's when Spanish conquistador Juan de Oñate led a group of settlers to the area. They established San Francisco de Asís, the first European settlement in what is today New Mexico. The native Tewa people had occupied these lands for centuries and built a thriving Pueblo village in the same location where Oñate founded Santa Fe. After destroying the Pueblo, the Spanish constructed the Palace of the Governors, now the oldest continuously occupied public building in America. Santa Fe was part of colonial New Spain for 200 years until Mexico's independence in 1821. It was then the capital of Mexico's Santa Fe de Nuevo Mexico province. After the Mexican-American War in 1848, Santa Fe became New Mexico capital when it joined the United States. So, despite its equivalent age to Jamestown, Santa Fe stands out as America's oldest capital city. It remains a vibrant fusion of Native American, Spanish colonial, and Wild West heritage. Number 1, St. Augustine, Florida. Finally, we arrive at the number 1 oldest city in America, St. Augustine, Florida, founded by the Spanish in 1565. That makes it nearly 50 years older than Jamestown, Virginia. In September 1565, Spanish admiral and conquistador Pedro Menéndez de Avilés established San Agustin at present-day St. Augustine. 200 colonists with timber tools, weapons, and seeds landed ashore. The site offered a perfect strategic port and base to defend Spanish treasure fleets, sailing through the dangerous Straits of Florida, where countless shipwrecks occurred. Menéndez quickly set the colonists to work building defenses, missions, and structures for the new settlement of St. Augustine. Over the next 200 years, St. Augustine would remain the capital of Spanish Florida until Britain gained control of the territory in 1763. Spain regained it 20 years later until ceding Florida to the U.S. in 1821. St. Augustine has the impressive distinction of being the oldest continuously occupied European settlement in the continental United States. Today, more than 450 years after its founding, you can still walk the cobbled stone streets of the old city built atop more than 4 centuries of history. Well, there you have it. The 10 oldest cities and towns in America based on their dates of European settlement, spanning over 400 years of early colonial history on these lands. From the Pilgrims' landing at Plymouth Rock to Spanish colonization of the Southwest, these settlements represent the first pioneers and conquistadors who laid the earliest foundations for what would become the United States. So next time you find yourself strolling the historic cobblestone streets of Santa Fe or touring Jamestown where English colonization began, Remember, you're stepping back in time over 4 centuries. Be sure to hit subscribe and stay tuned for more epic historical journeys around the globe here on Globe Trekking.